Good morning, world. Welcome to another episode of Xendependently Minded. If you are a new or returning listener, I truly hope you enjoy this episode. Before we get into the episode, here's a brief disclaimer. Enjoy. The views and opinions expressed by past, present, and future guests of Xendependently Minded have not been expressed by me, and they may not even be shared by me. The views and opinions that I express are, of course, satirical. If you're confused, then try this thought experiment to help you understand. If you like what I said, or say, and you agree, then you can tell yourself that it is my real opinion, and it's not satirical. If you don't agree with what I say, and you're disgusted and repulsed by it, then obviously I'm just being satirical. Obviously, these aren't my real opinions, because this is clearly a character, and nobody would actually have these opinions, would they? Anyway, enjoy the episode. How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy, Joe Walsh, aka Failed Conservative, Failed Commentator, Boomer, Loser, back at it with another episode of Xendependently Minded. We're here on the front lines of Iran at Karg Island. We're just off the coast of Karg Island, reporting to you on the somewhat stable condition of the ceasefire between the United States and Iran. I'm kind of actually sick of hearing the word ceasefire. You know what I thought of? Instead of ceasefire, let's do a shush fire. How about everybody shush? How about everybody shut their mouths? Because I'm getting real sick and tired of hearing people's ChatGPT and Grok opinions. Even Joe Rogan, the mighty Joe Rogan, he almost doesn't even use Jamie anymore on the podcast. All he does is every single question he has, he's like, I don't know if that's true. Hey, Jamie, can you use Perplexity? Perplexity is some other AI that sponsors Joe Rogan. And he doesn't even allow Jamie to do the research like that he's known for. He's the best at it. Joe will be finishing a sentence and Jamie will already have 6 articles about it, either to prove him wrong or prove him right or whatever. So now, even the mighty have fallen. To be fair, though, Joe Rogan has been doing it forever. Eventually, you're going to get a little tired. And also, he was never an intellectual giant. He was just and he still is, a great podcaster and voice for free speech. But man, it's been getting rough. It's been getting a little rough. His interview skills they're dwindling. That's for sure. He is not the interviewer he used to be, and it's been indicative in a lot of episodes. And one that I would recommend to people is Scott Horton episode. It's not the greatest interview Scott Horton's ever done because his interviewer's not doing a great job. Joe Rogan kind of doesn't let him make some points. It just wasn't his best. But Scott Horton is cool. I don't agree with him on everything, but he's been at it for a long time. He's an anti-war guy. He's been an anti-war guy since he's had a voice, since he's been doing radio, and he has a podcast and he's been on Piers Morgan Uncensored a few times. He has his own podcast. He has another podcast with the guy named Daryl Cooper, the dude who did Fear and Loathing in the New Jerusalem. It's all good stuff, so I would recommend that. That's my mini recommendation, because at the end of this episode, I actually am going to have my first anti-recommendation, my first warning for something that you guys shouldn't listen to. But we have a few things to talk about. We got 4 things mainly to talk about. They pretty much all have something to do with the United States except one of them. So a quick preview at what we're going to be discussing today. What I'm going to be discussing today and yelling into the void about is the United States canceling moves of military units or soldiers, whatever you want to call them, to Europe, specifically Germany. I'm going to be talking about them because I don't really care about Poland, because we have a better relationship with Poland than we do Germany right now. Not that the one with Germany is bad either. Going to be talking about the Trump assassination attempt, elections in the UK, and a pretty funny, at least to me, message that the U.S. Embassy in Berlin just put out, which I believe would apply to all embassies. I haven't looked into it that much because I don't care, because I'm American and I don't give a shit about visas. I don't care about the visa requirements because I'm not applying for a visa to get into America, because that's my home and I'm an American. All right, first and foremost, let's talk about the United States canceling some troop movements to Germany. So after the Iran war started, the United States and Israel did their thing. Whether you agree with the premise of the war, I've talked about it. I'm disappointed that we started it. There's no love lost for the terrorists. the terrorist supporters that are being killed in Iran. But I just don't know what the end goal is. The end goal has never really been clear. They keep saying it's so Iran can't get a nuke. And I'm cool with that. I don't want Iran to have a nuke. Most of the world doesn't want Iran to have a nuke. I can tell you who doesn't want Iran to have a nuke. Every single surrounding country near Iran, within missile striking distance. So obviously Israel doesn't want them to have a nuke. United Arab Emirates, Dubai, Oman, Bahrain, all these countries that got attacked in the response after we killed their Ayatollah, and then they immediately replaced him. And then they replaced the council that chooses who the replacement for the Ayatollah is. So the stated goal has never been clear. It's supposed to be to end their nuclear capabilities, but they said that they did that last summer when they bombed those nuclear factories, or whatever you call them. The ones that were supposedly buried in mountains. They used bunker busters, destroyed them, and then they said, oh, there's actually more. So I'm not a huge fan of it. But regardless, we called on our allies, especially in Europe, because Europe is closer to the Middle East than the United States is. We called on them to assist us, and none of them came to our assistance. Even some decided they were going to invoke technically there's a rule that in some of the airfields, some of the air bases across Europe, there's a rule that you're technically, they will never host any aircraft that are currently fighting wars, because it kind of puts them not involuntarily, but it kind of puts them passively in the war. But that rule has been broken many times. I can guarantee you that. I don't need to get into detail about it, but I promise you that rule has not been being followed. Now they decided they wanted to follow that rule. A couple countries, I won't say any specifically, but airfields and air bases in the southern part of the United States decided they were going to turn away some planes. They said, you're not going to land here. They were either coming to refuel or restock up, whatever. And then they also, and this is public news. This is stuff that you can read about. You can type in, European military base turns away U.S. jets or whatever. So that's that part. They're actively resisting helping us and then just not answering the call. I think the only country in Europe that actually did assist in some kind of way by sending their own supplies or people to fight was the UK. But the UK wasn't doing it for us. They were doing it for themselves, because one of their bases had a missile launched at them. I don't think it hit them, but it came close enough for them to be bothered. So that wasn't enough for the United States to pull troops from Germany. But the Chancellor of Germany, this failed loser, the guy he's like the third replacement after the girl broke up with their true love. Their true love cheated on them, and then they got the backup, and now this is the other backup. This is the next backup after the second one failed too. This guy sucks. He's doing a horrible job. Everybody hates him. There will probably be a vote of no confidence for him as well. That's my prediction. I don't understand German politics. I don't care that much about German politics, other than like the basis of their policies and, how it affects me, how it affects the rest of Europe, because I love Germany and I love Europe. But the Chancellor's a failure, and he decided to open his big fat mouth and say, Iran is humiliating the United States. So Trump not only threatened, but he actually decided to cancel a unit move to Germany, and he announced the withdrawal of 5,000 troops, plus more in the future. This brings so much joy to me because, it's a double-edged sword, because one, I'm here because I'm an American. So when the relationship between America and Germany starts to sour, that can affect me. But, I'm not worried about it. I have a real adult has backup plans, right? But this brings me so much joy because all of Europe, since the Russia-Ukraine war started and before then, since we've been here keeping the peace, because I don't hate to be this guy. I'm not a propagandist. This isn't propaganda. This is just facts. The United States is a peacekeeping force. Whether it's peace through strength, or it's peace through diplomacy, it's peace regardless. If we got to punch you in the mouth, if we got to clock both your guys' heads together to make you agree to stop fighting, or maybe we have to pay you every year like we pay Israel and Egypt to not fight anymore. That's why we send millions of dollars to Egypt every year. Part of it is so they don't fight Israel, they don't attack Israel. Regardless, I've said this before. I don't care the methods you have to take to get there, but when people stop dying, when kids stop getting blown up, when more terrorists stop getting created because their husbands, fathers, brothers, nephews, grandsons and grandfathers get killed, that's a good thing. So we've been in Europe, we've been a peacekeeping force because there are a lot of countries in Europe that hate each other and they're chomping at the bit to fight each other. This is a promise. If you don't believe this, this is a guarantee, I mean. Look into Bosnia and Croatia. Look into Serbia. Look into Bulgaria and Turkey. These countries, I promise you, would be in some kind of conflict if we weren't here to help keep the peace. This is an undeniable fact. And for anybody and listen, I'm completely in favor in eliminating fraud and waste, cutting the amount of supplies and the amount of money that we spend on bases overseas, for sure. I'm not saying it's perfect. There's a lot of people that I've worked with in the past where I'm like, you should not have a job anywhere, let alone overseas, getting paid what you're getting paid. You are a waste of space, waste of taxpayer dollars. Get away from me. There's a lot of that, for sure. But there's a balance. There's a middle ground to be made. You can't replace the United States, the most powerful military in the entire world. These tiny European countries, they can spend their 5% of their GDP on defense. It's not going to ever replace us. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing, I think. We're never going to be fully replaced. I don't think we'll ever have a zero presence. So we started pulling troops from there's like a range. There's a base in Bavaria, a state in Germany. It's kind of to the east. It's near the border of the Czech Republic. Again, this is public information. You can look this up. But it's called Vilsek Grafenwehr. It's a combined garrison. Started pulling troops from there. 5,000 troops were being taken. And what was funny, and I don't think this is funny. I don't take joy from German people being panicked over this, because they are. People keep thinking, people always have this idea that everybody hates us. Everyone hates America. Actually, everyone loves us. When we bomb you, you don't like us. But most countries in the world and the people love us. They still love us. They still love us. They pretend like they don't, but they do. The people of Germany are now going to suffer directly and indirectly because we are pulling troops from Germany. And what this means in the future, it could be more suffering and more panic for them. So the mayor of Vilsek, so this small town, it's a rural town, it's farmland, there's not a lot going on there. Part of the reason why we put a base there, because it's perfect open area for us to train, for our soldiers to train. The mayor of this town, of Vilsek, is panicking because he stated that the bases have helped development of this otherwise neglected part of Germany. You know, Bavaria is the state that Munich is in. The big cities are going to get most of the aid. You know, the roads are not up to par. The infrastructure is kind of crumbling. It's not up to par for the local Germans. And he's basically saying, you know, before the Americans got here, we were super neglected. We were he actually is quoted as saying we were one of the most neglected areas of all of Germany. So you have the guy who runs this city, and I guarantee you, you know, I read this quote from a German news site. I guarantee you when they went to interview him, they wanted him to say, oh yeah, the Americans are so loud, they're constantly blowing stuff up and they're shooting and they're rude and they're mean and blah blah. No, he said, please don't leave. My city is in the best shape it's ever been because of the Americans. The same thing in Ramstein Air Base. Everybody knows this. Ramstein Air Base, I believe, is the largest, or it's the second largest U.S. base outside of the United States. It is the third largest employer of Germans in this area, because it's not just this base, there's many surrounding bases. It is the third largest employer of Germans. So this isn't Americans. This is for German locals that work on the base, that provide a service, whether it be military support, whether it be troop support, whether it be, you know, working at a store or a gas station, or they're doing lawn care. Germans are better off in these areas per themselves. Also, some locals in the Ramstein area were interviewed, some local Germans that have been there their whole lives, and they said, if it wasn't for the Americans, we would still be milking cows. So, I don't take any joy in the fact that these Germans are panicking because it's not their fault. Their prime minister. I've been paying so much attention to UK politics lately. I keep saying prime minister. Their chancellor is an idiot. And I feel bad when elected leaders suck. We've been there. You've been there. Sometimes you vote for someone and they end up lying. Sometimes you vote for someone, they end up not fulfilling their promises, or sometimes you don't vote for them at all and you're stuck with them, as is the case for a third of Germans. It's just really funny. I take a lot of joy in seeing European Union cronies like Merz, like Macron, these people across Europe that talk so much crap about America, but the second we talk about leaving or we actually start pulling our troops out, they panic. So far, Merz hasn't panicked. He tried to say, and someone from his office tried to say, oh, the only reason Trump is doing this is because he's very unpopular back home, so he's doing this to try to kind of boost himself in the polls before the midterms. He might be partially right about that, but guess what? It doesn't matter because you're still screwed. Because you know what else your chancellor said a year ago? Your chancellor, Merz, everybody's least favorite chancellor since the last guy in the 30s. He said after Trump started flirting with the idea of possibly leaving NATO, or at least starting to pull troops out of the United States, or out of Europe, so Europeans didn't 100% depend on us for defense because they're not fulfilling their 5% GDP, blah, blah, blah. Merz said, okay, we're going to do a voluntary draft. We're going to do voluntary military service to try to get our numbers up. And then when that didn't work, they said, we're going to try to vote in mandatory military service. And then when that didn't work, Merz suffered defeat. And then he announced publicly, this is something he publicly said, something that I as a non-German local, could not believe. But a lot of my German colleagues said, oh yeah, we've known this. This is the quiet part out loud. So Merz said, after failing to fill the military with military age men, German men, he said, Germany will not be able to create, a large, substantial military force because it would be filled with people from African and Middle Eastern countries. He didn't say the next part, but we all know why you don't want to hand guns to those people, because they don't like Germany. They don't like Germans. You hand them guns, they're going to start shooting at the population. If you don't believe me, just talk to a German who served in the German military. I worked with a guy who served in the German military, and he was over in Afghanistan back when Germany was helping the United States. They had a guy whose job was to watch their backs because the locals and the non-Germans that were fighting in the military could not be trusted because they would constantly shoot the Germans or shoot the Danish or the Americans in the back when their backs were turned. So, when you have a weak leader like this, when you have a weak leader like Merz who doesn't have the interest of Germans in mind, he has an interest in higher office in the European Union, he has higher office, he wants to kiss Ursula von der Leyen's butt up in Brussels, he has aspirations that that just completely surpass and ignore the needs of Germans, his constituents, the citizens of the country he was elected to protect and to better the lives of. When you have someone like him, a complete failure in every sense of the word, this is what you get. You can't create your own military, so if the United States decides that they're going to pull out, maybe it's not on bad terms, they just decide, hey, we can't afford this. World empiring is too expensive, which we've seen. And we're going to start pulling troops from different areas. We're going to keep the ones in the vital areas, but in the ones that are less vital, we're going to pull them. You can't even fill the void in those kind of more positive circumstances, but you also can't keep your mouth shut. So now troops are being pulled because you wouldn't shut your mouth. We've been wanting to do it anyway. We just needed a reason to do it sooner. And I hope this is permanent. I hope we pull more troops out of these areas. It's a win-win. It's a win-win for America. And at the end of the day, I have no ill will towards the Germans. It's not their fault. Just like I wouldn't want them to be mad at me for, if Joe Biden did something that was stupid, or Trump does something that's stupid. Doesn't mean every American is responsible for what the president does. It's the same in Germany. It's the same in pretty much every nation. Whether you voted for him or not, sometimes, like I said, there's unintended consequences. Regardless, looks like some Germans are going to have to go back to milking the cows. And maybe Merz will get voted out of office again, and we'll get someone cool. We'll get someone populist, someone who's actually pro-German and not pro-European Union, not pro-Ursula von der Leyen or pro-Brussels, which is not even in Germany. It's in a different country, yet they make some big decisions for the rest of Europe. And, it's a shame because Germany has a lot of problems. Recently, there was, in Leipzig, there was a mentally ill person who was just forced out of a mental institution because there's no space for him. There's a guy in Leipzig who took his car and he rammed it through a crowd of people and killed a couple and injured a bunch. And turns out he was a boxing coach. He used to box, so he has a lot of brain damage, mental illness. Germany knows that he's mentally ill because he was in a mental institution. I think it was a state-run institution, but they had to kick him out. Can you take a guess as to why they had to kick out a mentally ill German? This is a German citizen, white German man with a German name and a German last name. Why would they have to kick him out? It's because they didn't have enough space. Why don't they have enough space? Because the state-ran and the private institutions for mental health are filled with people from Africa and the Middle East. So the immigration issue is affecting them in direct and indirect ways. In a direct way, when you have these psychopaths from Syria, they hate Germany, they hate Western culture, they hate Christianity, they hate white people, they hate non-Muslims, decide to drive through Christmas markets killing people. One of the most traditional, beloved times of the year, you have these Islamists, mentally ill, psychos, and I hate using the term mentally ill because for a lot of people, it gives them a pass. To me, that's just more of a reason to dump them into a meat grinder because they're never going to be a functioning member of society. If you are mentally ill, so mentally ill, quote unquote, that you've decided to drive through a Christmas market and purposefully kill people, this is a hate crime. I don't think it was registered as a hate crime. But if you just look sideways at somebody and their 12 sister, nephew, daughter wives, that could be a hate crime. You are considered Islamophobic in a lot of countries in Europe, Germany, the United Kingdom. That is a direct consequence where Germans are suffering from the horrible decade or 2 decades long immigration policy for not just Germany, but most of Europe. And then an indirect consequence. You have a guy, a German, a taxpayer, who is within his right because he pays taxes, high taxes because he's German, within his right to seek and receive care at a mental health facility. He gets turned away, and then he ends up having an episode or whatever, driving into a crowd of people in Leipzig and killing them and injuring a bunch. Put that guy in the meat grinder as well. Also, arrest and put these people into prison that kicked him out of the mental institution, not the workers there that are overworked and probably they hate their lives. They're trying to make a difference. The people who own these institutions, if it's a private institution, lock them up. If it's a state-ran institution, lock those people up immediately. This is, these are the problems that Merz is deciding to ignore in favor of dunking on the United States and Donald Trump. Also, Germany last year had 250,000 separate cases of rape. 250,000 separate, individual, reported cases of rape. So those are the ones that were reported. Lots of victims do not come out. They don't go and report the crimes because either they're too scared, they're ashamed, or their brains mentally blocked it because it was so traumatic. So that's 250,000 cases of rape in Germany last year. And the chancellor decides to take this opportunity to not better his country, but dunk on the President of the United States and the United States. Chancellor Merz, you should be familiar with this idiom, man kann nicht den Kuchen essen und ihn behalten, which doesn't directly translate to, but it means the same thing. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Speaking of Trump had assassination attempt number 3 on his life. Luckily, he was not hurt, and I don't believe there was anyone else who were hurt. Maybe there was a Secret Service member who was shot, but I believe they made a recovery, or they're not going to die. They're not in critical condition, which is great news, of course. But when will they learn? And by they, I mean radical leftists. Which the guy who tried to assassinate Trump is like, he is the embodiment of the term radical leftist. When will they learn that this won't work? When will this learn that this will not only work, this will just make it worse? If you get your stated outcome and you kill the president of the United States, that doesn't benefit the United States, and it doesn't benefit the goal of trying to, end MAGA or end support for Trump. It would just make him a martyr. Not only that, it's also just an immoral and evil thing to do. I shouldn't wish violence on anybody. I refuse to wish violence on anybody because I've seen violence, not firsthand really. I've lived a pretty blessed life, but I've seen political violence, pretty close my entire life. I'm 26 years old and I've seen political violence, every single election, all the midterms, the Charlottesville tiki torches, or at least the response to that, Black Lives Matter. I've seen political violence, and political violence is gay. It actually sucks. Nothing is gayer than political violence, actually. If you can't beat them with your ideas, with debates, with policy, you just decide to resort to violence, you're just an animal. You're a bug. You're like the dung beetles that will fight for days on end over a ball of actual poop. Anyway, this will make it worse. And what's really funny is you have a lot of milquetoast losers, failed conservatives, failed commentators, like the person I introduced earlier before, Joe Walsh. Nobody under the age of 30 should know who that guy is. He's a complete failure. I don't know much about him. I just don't like him. He recently was on Piers Morgan Uncensored, and he was trying to play that the Woodstock hippie boomer thing where you go, hey man, let's just be friends and have conversations, man. We can just have conversations instead of resort to violence, man. Sorry, that time's passed. Now is not a time for violence. That's never a time. I want to be completely clear about that. But we're done talking to you. We're done talking to you. That time has passed. Hey man, let's just have conversations, man. We were doing that. We as in everybody who's slightly right of center. We're doing that. They were cool with it, engaged in it. An entire new form of conversation in the form of Change My Mind with Charlie Kirk and Steven Crowder. We tried that. And your guys on your side that you associate with, that you defend, shot the guy in the neck and killed him. By the way, that was the moderate guy. And now that he's gone, the void is being filled with a bunch of discount losers, retards, and then actual pretty formidable and pretty impressive voices like Nick Fuentes. People who are much more radical. So you have people like Nick Fuentes filling the void. This is what you get. You should have dealt with Charlie Kirk. You should have continued to debate with him. But your side decided to shoot him in the neck. And I'm not saying Joe Walsh did it, obviously. Joe Walsh didn't do it. But you don't get to sit here and associate with these people. You don't get to sit here and associate with these people, defend them, repeat their talking points, use dangerous, violent rhetoric, like the violent rhetoric that I shared a compilation of, not regular people using, our leaders. Regular people can slip up and say things that might be viewed as violent rhetoric. But when your leaders, the leaders filling your political party, constantly use violent rhetoric, and you defend them, you vote for them, you cheer for them, you celebrate them, you're a little responsible. So losers like Joe Walsh should shut their mouths. We're done with that. We're done with that. America is so lucky that in response to Charlie Kirk's assassination, we didn't have violence. We didn't turn into a PvP server where everybody decided they were going to shoot back. We're so lucky. I'm so grateful for that. But we're done with the conversations. We're done. That time has passed. You missed your chance. You killed the moderate. You killed the guy, the most popular, loudest voice for moderates. And now this is what you get. I will not, and most Americans will not, negotiate with terrorists, whether they be domestic or foreign. I will not negotiate with you. I will not engage in conversation with you. I will ignore you. You're a bug. You're a mosquito flying near my ear. I'm going to ignore you. You don't matter to me. Your opinion does not matter to me. And it shouldn't, and I don't think it really does matter to most sane people. If you saw the video of Charlie Kirk getting assassinated and you felt anything other than horror, if you felt any semblance of joy, your opinion should be discarded immediately, and no one should ever talk to you. No one should ever have a conversation with you. No one should ever engage in discourse with you, because you cannot be reasoned with. So you just must be ignored. You must be ignored. You'll die alone in your basement, where you're celebrating making TikToks, celebrating the death and the murder, the slaughtering of a man. Yes, I'm still not over it. I never will be. That was a pivotal moment in modern American history and modern American culture, unfortunately. I wish it would have been a pivotal moment in the opposite direction, but it wasn't. And by the opposite direction, I mean nobody getting killed. Nobody getting shot in the neck and bleeding out in front of millions of people. Because there were millions of people who watched Charlie Kirk, millions of people who were probably watching that, and a sum total of the people who are there and the people who are watching online. So, like I said, do not negotiate with terrorists, domestic or foreign. Next up, the United Kingdom is starting to see massive, sweeping election wins for the Reform Party, which is like kind of the Timu version of, I guess you would look at as MAGA for Great Britain. So I compare everything to MAGA because MAGA is the most sweeping, successful populist kind of movement that we've seen in a long time in any developed nation's elections. Obviously, this is a movement that's been more than 10 years strong. You might say that it's wavered at some points, like right now, but the meaning of MAGA, the meaning of America First, that's going to endure for the rest of time. This is a movement that has surpassed Trump. It's a movement that's far bigger than him, and it's going to be here after he's out of office and after he's gone. But the United Kingdom has seen some big wins for the Reform Party, which is headed by Nigel Farage in some local elections, some big wins, and also the Restore Party, which I'm more excited for than the Reform Party, because the Restore Party is the real thing. The Reform Party is kind of the centrist, little too milquetoast for me. Nigel Farage has been on video saying we're going to deport them all, and then the second Reform starts to get wins in elections, he's like, well, we were never going to deport them all. It's not possible. We're not even going to try, because that would be a waste of time. Restore is a new political party. It was created just a few months ago, and it's headed by, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name, Rupert something. He's great. You should follow him on Twitter. He says everything that I think that not just British people, British locals and citizens feel, but also a lot of Europeans. He has his finger on the pulse, that's for sure. He's a farmer. I think he's a member of parliament, and he knows, he has his finger on the pulse. He knows exactly how to speak the language of his constituents. And Restore, they shot 100% from the floor, 100% from the free throw line. They won all 10 seats in the 10 seats they were running for in a town. These town names in the UK are ridiculous. I can't remember. It was some small town in the UK called like Gravy Upon Biscuits or whatever. Regardless, it's a very positive sign that this party that was just created won all 10 seats that they were running for. That is a good sign. Plus, it was done in a small town where blue-collar, hardworking Brits live. So, if you want to understand how the general, regular population, the non-elite population is going to vote, you look at the results of this election. So, what I see happening is Reform, possibly Nigel Farage, possibly being the next Prime Minister of the UK. They might not do the best job, because, like I said, they're a little milquetoast. I hope that they do. I hope for success. I hope for success for Great Britain, because I really do love that place. I really do love the people. I love their contributions to modern society cannot be understated. And watching the downfall of their culture and their society and the attacks on them and just the suffering that they've endured because, again, of that immigration policy I talked about and failed former leaders and current leaders, it brings me a lot of sorrow, because I don't want to see this happen to anybody, but I definitely don't want to see it happen to them. So it's really impressive to see that they're winning. And then at the same time, there's a new Unite the Kingdom rally headed by Tommy Robinson being completely propagandized, completely lied about by the current Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, another failure. I couldn't honestly tell you. Keir Starmer is worse than Mertz. He's worse than Mertz, in my opinion. But this guy is such a failure that his own party is like staging a mutiny against him, and he still won't step down as Prime Minister of Great Britain. It's really pathetic. It's really sad to see him continue to cling to power. And then he decided he was going to speak out against the Unite the Kingdom rally, a rally that's there to celebrate the United Kingdom, try to unify the people against a common enemy which is, I don't need to say it, but he decided to speak out. Rather than talk about, again, addressing the problems that plague your constituents, the citizens of Great Britain, you decide to speak out against a rally that's supposed to be celebrating British culture, British identity, British history, right? You decide to come out and you speak against it. Meanwhile, this is how, I talk about Rupert Lowe, the head of the Restore Britain party. He has his finger on the pulse. Whatever the complete polar opposite of that is Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer hasn't spoken out about the most recent slaying of an 18-year-old British kid. So if you guys don't know, on one hand, Reform is gaining seats. They're gaining popularity. Restore is making the most impressive historical gains, probably, the least that I'm aware of in British politics, because again, I'm not British. I don't know much about British politics, but it's very impressive. It is in direct correlation with things like what just happened in Great Britain this past week. So there was a British 18-year-old boy. I mean, he's 18 years old. He's a kid still. This is a British kid, a white Anglo-Saxon British kid who was walking down the street and he saw an Indian guy with an 8-inch ceremonial blade. He looked at him kind of funny, and that Indian guy decided he was going to stab him. So he stabbed him a bunch of times, and then he chased him. That kid was running, bleeding out, jumped over a fence, ended up collapsing. The police were called. I'm not sure if they were called by the kid who was stabbed or by the Indian guy or some passerbys. Anyway, the British cops came. They arrested not the Indian guy who stabbed the kid. They arrested the 18-year-old kid who was stabbed. And while he was in custody, handcuffed, laying on the ground, he bled out and he died. So, if you aren't aware, it's not legal to have knives out in public in Britain because they have a knife problem. This Indian guy was allowed to have it because it's like a ceremonial, chic, religious blade. He was allowed to keep it. So because this kid looked at him funny, as anybody would if you saw someone with a medieval Elder Scrolls Skyrim dagger in public, this freak, this evil demon decided to stab him and kill him. And what did the police do? They arrested the white kid. They arrested the Brit who was bleeding out and he ended up dying. Again, those cops should not only be fired from their job, they should lose their wages for that day, for that week, and they should get put into prison alongside this mentally ill, sword-wielding freak, this demon that shouldn't even be here to begin with, let alone be allowed to have a dagger stabbing kids. And because the Indian guy said, oh, he was being racist to me, he looked funny to me, they arrested the kid who was bleeding. I mean, this is the failure on unseen levels. That is direct correlation. Things like that happen all the time, believe it or not. Not all the time. It's not super common. I don't want to be doom and gloom, but things like this happen, and the response to them are not appropriate. People are getting arrested for tweets. Meanwhile, there are grooming gangs. There are Pakistani grooming gangs. There are insanely high levels of incest from certain regions of the world. The immigrants that come from certain regions of the world come to the UK. They commit crimes on a per capita level that shouldn't be accepted, that wouldn't be accepted anywhere else, except for in Europe, with the exception of Poland and Hungary, possibly, or Switzerland. These are the issues that Keir Starmer, Prime Minister of Great Britain, probably soon to be former Prime Minister of Great Britain, hopefully he gets voted out. But then the person that they're going to put in is just going to be someone from his coalition who's going to be worse. It'll probably be a woman. It'll probably be a woman that gets on live television and the first thing she does is defend the Indian guy. What is that? What is that exactly? Not the suicidal empathy part that God talks about all the time. What is that thing where some people think that it is appropriate in 2026. It might have been appropriate 3,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago. We have to go back farther to when we were Neanderthals. Why is it that certain people that lack impulse control I'm not even trying to be funny. This is a real question. This isn't a culture, race, ethnicity thing, religious thing. There's this problem. You have a lot of people that lack formed brains. They lack impulse control. You see it in America. You see videos of it all the time. You see, and this is all people. I mean, too. This isn't a single narrow group either. It's just it's a group of like lobotomized people that, if they're slightly if they perceive any slight disrespect, just someone looking at you funny, their immediate thing is, well, he did this, he said this word, he looked at me funny, he looked at my girl funny, he looked at my shoes funny, so I decided to beat him. I decided to exert violence upon them. We're not Neanderthals anymore. We're not tribal. We're still tribal, but we're not tribal beings to where you're in the woods, you're trying to cut down a coconut from a tree, and then you see some tribal people that you don't know, and you decide to start launching rocks at them and killing them and raiding their village. It's 2026. You should be able to go out in public, and then maybe someone looks at you a little funny, and then not immediately resort to violence. Also, like I said, if the rest of the UK can't have knives in public, then so should every other. The law should be made equal for everybody. But that's the problem that people have been talking about across not just Great Britain, but the rest of the United Kingdom, that there's a two-tier justice system. And Keir Starmer and the rest of his colleagues and the people that are a part of his coalition will look you straight in the eyes with their soulless. Keir Starmer kind of has like a fetal alcohol syndrome look, no light in their eyes. They'll look you dead in the face at a story like this and say, there is no two-tier justice system in the United Kingdom. There's no two-tier justice system in Great Britain. Okay, then why was this guy with this wacky sword, this wacky dagger, allowed to go out in public with it? Why was he allowed to keep it to begin with, let alone go out in public? Why was he not arrested? Why was the kid arrested? And I guarantee you nothing will happen to him. Nothing will happen to him according to the law, but the locals might. The locals might react in their own way, as they did a couple summers ago in Manchester and across major cities in Great Britain. Obviously, I'm not advocating for violence, but what else are they supposed to do? What else are the citizens of Great Britain and the United Kingdom supposed to do? Well, they're doing the best that they can in voting in these parties that I hope, and put an end to this type of two-tier justice system. I hope for the best for them, just like I hope for the best for everybody else. I truly hope that this is just the beginning of wins for the British, for the people of Britain, for the future of Britain. I really, really, really do hope that Restore eventually gets into power and they can start making some positive changes, because, I love that great nation. I love the nations that make up the United Kingdom. So I hope we continue to see this trend in a positive direction. The last thing I wanted to talk about is a bit of news, some new guidelines that were published on the U.S. Embassy in Berlin's social media and their website. And it's funny because this source that I got this from was someone that was very upset about it for some reason. I don't know why, but the source, I don't know, it's just kind of a surprising source that I found this out from, because I probably wouldn't have found out. I don't care about Berlin. Berlin is the worst city in Europe, possibly. It's possibly the worst city in Europe. It's for sure the worst city in Germany. It's the most overrated place in Germany. You should never waste your time there. I also don't care about embassies, because I don't usually need to go there, and the Frankfurt embassy is closer to where I'm at anyway. But regardless, the U.S. Embassy in Berlin put out new guidelines requiring those applying for U.S. visas, all kinds of U.S. visas, they have to make their social media posts public. I absolutely love this. This makes me so happy. It also made me really happy to open up the comments and see the same tired line from people that they're not even trying to go to America, so they don't care. They just want something to complain about. But they use the same tired line of, we have a name for this. 1984, it's supposed to be a fictional book, not guidelines. We have a name for this. It's called the Stasi. We have a name for this. It's called Nazis. Oh, man. America, it's like traveling back to the Holocaust. There's like, there's Germans that are posting this, that are commenting this, which is ironic to say the least. But I love this. Because if you have the intention of hurting America and you post about it, which, funny enough, in 2026, most people do. Most people will a lot of people will pledge support for terrorists on social media. They won't just behind closed doors go, oh, I like Hamas. Oh, I like Hezbollah. The largest political streamer for the left is a Turk who was born in Turkey, who lives in LA, and he has interviewed Houthi members, Houthi terrorists. He has talked about how he loves Hezbollah's flag, the Houthi flag. He likes Hamas. Hamas are freedom fighters. This is the largest streamer for the left in America. If you don't believe me, his name is Hassan Piker. He is one of the loudest voices for the left, for the youth, for the left in America. So you have him, and then you had Charlie Kirk. They debated one time, and Hassan lost so bad that he said he wanted to kill Charlie Kirk. And then after Charlie Kirk was assassinated, he, along with fellow graduate from Quality Learning Center Ilhan Omar, justified the assassination. So, that's what we have. Anyway, if you have intention of hurting America, and you post about it, which most idiots do, you're denied. If you have, or you associate, or support terrorists, many idiots do, and they post about it on social media for the world to see, denied. You don't get freedom of speech until you're an American citizen. Sorry. It's a win-win for us because we get to filter out the rotten apples and scare away potential leeches and assholes. I don't want terror supporters in America. And Americans shouldn't either. You don't get to claim you have freedom of speech if you're not even an American yet. If you're here on a visa to work and you threaten violence, you make social media posts about wanting to harm America or Americans, or you pledge support, or you associate with terrorist groups that want to destroy America and hurt Americans, you're not coming to my country. You're not coming to my country. You're not an American. You don't get freedom of speech. I don't care. Get out of my country. Don't even think about coming here again because you're not welcome. We're done with people like you. Americans are fed up with people like you. You should have came in with the other 20 million under the Biden administration. Sorry, that train has left. That train has left the station, and it hopefully fell off the tracks and will never come again. It kind of reminds me of the meme about when the Spanish first arrived to the Americas and encountered all these people who were doing human sacrifice and stuff, and it just shows a Chad with the conquistador helmet on, and it says, sorry, the human sacrificing stops now. Because a lot of people have that stupid, the noble savage myth of everybody here before the Europeans came, they were just living in the dirt, and they were growing trees and one with nature. No, they were cutting kids' heads off and drinking blood and using their skulls as cups. And then the Spanish and the Europeans came, and then they made something out of the Americas. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode of Xendependently Minded. I hope you guys enjoyed. Sorry that it's been a while, but I've been very busy. Lots of exciting things going on in my life. So I hope you're doing well. My anti-recommendation is not just this newest Drake album or Drake set of albums, but it's any music by Drake at all. Drake sucks so bad. Drake is what ChatGPT music sounds like. He hasn't put anything out that's worth mentioning since he was an actor on Nickelodeon. He sucks. He's trash. He's one of the worst, most overrated, trash artists. He is the epitome of mediocrity, and he's also, for some reason, like one of the most popular artists of our time, which really, really makes you depressed. It makes you want to put Bailey's Irish Cream in your coffee every day and then drive afterwards. But don't listen to his new album or any of his music. It's terrible. I'm also not a Kendrick Lamar fan, so a lot of people, like, when I make fun of Drake, they're like, you probably like Kendrick Lamar. No, I don't like him either. When I listen to that music, it makes me want to drive on the wrong side of the road at a really high speed. So that's my anti-recommendation. Go listen to some old Eminem or Tupac or Kanye West or something. Or just listen to a podcast. Don't listen to Drake. Drake sucks. If you listen to Drake, I kind of feel bad for you, but to each their own. That's my anti-recommendation. I don't really have any other recommendations other than listening to Scott Horton. Yeah, but that's going to do it for this episode. Hope you took something away from it, and stay hydrated, stay caffeinated. As always, stay safe and stay away from those crazies out there. Catch you on the next episode. Thank you.